We're in Carbondale at Laura May's apartment complex, the Towers, the day after her 65th birthday, and that's the reason I'm here, to help her celebrate her birthday. It's December 2nd, 1990. It's a beautiful day.
We just had family dinner out. Okay, what's the name? Giant City State Park. They have a big lodge with a beautiful rustic dining room.
It was beautiful and good.
Family-style dinner, chicken, mashed potatoes and gravy, dressing, green beans, corn, coleslaw, hot rolls.
They knew this was a holiday, so they did holiday cooking for us.
All for $5.95. But it's so open and friendly looking.
Beautiful.
Away from the hustle bustle.
Tell us your first memory of your sister.
Probably giving me a bath and cleaning me up and curling my hair. I had long blonde hair, and she'd curl it around her finger just like Mom did.
Yeah, you just start combing it around and around and around and around. And slip your finger out.
Nellie Olson style curls.
Who's Nellie Olson?
Nellie Olson on Little House on the Prairie, the mean one.
That's right.
Sure, I had Nellie Olson curls.
The thing I can remember most is Mother had little different colors of yellow, variegated thread. She had a little crocheted dress done, real lacy open work with a yellow taffeta slip under it and a black velvet sash. And the biggie of the year was the corn carnival, or old settlers' day. There were 2 carnivals every year in Canton. And we lived way on the other end of town from Grandma and Grandpa's. It must have been probably at least 12 city blocks, would you think?
Oh, at least.
But anyway, I dressed her all up, washed her hair, and curled it. Sparkly eyes and her big dimples in the whole bit. She looked so cute. I had walked her all the way down to Grandma and Grandpa's before I took her to the carnival. And she was so tired by the time we got back uptown, she said, "Let's go home, Jessie." Do you remember that picture taken in the little booth at the back of your head with the curls?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the day that we did that. Took one of the front and one of the back. I was so proud of her hair. She was such a pretty little girl.
But I did win something at that. We did go to that corn carnival, and I won something, like some silver money. I don't know if it was a quarter or a silver dollar or what it was.
The prettiest little girl or baby or
Prettiest
longest
something.
hair or something.
I was just a little kid. You need to remember this stuff.
But I'm 65 now.
I think probably one of the best memories I have, and you may even remember this, Joel, it was when we lived in Canton, and we had Christmas, and your mom made little red and white striped bags for all the little kids.
Oh, that was in Centerville. We had.
No, it
that
was in Canton. It was
That
at
was
our
right.
house in Canton.
That's
and
right.
every hour or so, she'd ring a bell, and then she'd give all the little kids a gift to put in this little bag she'd made with their names on it, like coloring books and colors and
trinkets just
Yeah.
to keep the kids busy until we were all through getting dinner and eating and ready to open presents and stuff.
The kids used those bags all through school, too.
Did they really?
Yeah, they kept their colors and things in them.
It was
took
red
them
and
to
white
school.
striped feather
Yep.
ticking, I think.
Yeah.
That was fun. The thing I remember was the Thanksgiving that Joel came to Centerville, and I got the long tables from the church and stretched them clear across Grandma Smith's long dining room, living room there, covered them with the white paper tablecloths, and then put salted peanuts and corn candy, all the way down the middle. The kids loved that.
Yeah.
Roxanne is a good one to talk to. She reminisces and she can remember that stuff. They came over and stayed with me. Rick, Patsy, Roxanne. I can't remember if there was any more. But anyway, we went to the dime store, and I think I let them have a quarter. They could buy anything they wanted in the store as long as it didn't cost more than a quarter. And I think it took them 2 hours to pick out what they wanted. Roxanne slept with me in that back bedroom off Grandma's kitchen that looks out on Mrs. Nelson's chicken farm. And she didn't want to wake me up. So I woke up one morning and the whole windowsill was full of feathers. And I thought, what's going on here? And she had sat with the pillow and pulled the little sticky quills of the feathers. She had pulled all these feathers out of the pillow and just laid them over in the windowsill. I don't know how long she had worked on that to get all these feathers. It was cute.
To go back to the old days, she was a wild person in high school. I was a very little child, but I remember that.
Do we really want to go through this?
One time,
Definitely do.
one time, she
I remember that.
She tried to sneak out the door to go to another one of these. I don't know if it was
My
a dance or a
grandchildren are going to be
carnival
watching
or
this.
what it was, but she snuck out the door in Florence's new dress. And the next thing I knew, Dad was just having a fit. And he said, Florence took Laura May's dress off in the yard. Now you've got to realize this is in the 1940s when people didn't run around without their clothes on. And my, that was a crazy night at our house. But the thing was, you see, she snuck out in Florence's new dress, but she wasn't quite fast enough because Florence came home. It just as she's, you know, cutting across the lawn in her new dress, so she took it off from her out in the yard.
She was mean and tough.
But why would anybody leave in somebody else's new clothes?
Well, because mine was probably laid on the floor all wrinkled.
Yep, yep. She used to throw all her clothes on the floor. That's another thing I remember about her.
Peter comes by that on his swing.
And then she'd get up at about 20 minutes to 9, and she had a mile to walk to school and be there by 9 o'clock, you see. And we had
this is the old stovepipe.
a coal-burning stove, and she'd iron these clothes on the stovepipe. I remember that so plainly.
The stovepipe came up through our bedroom. The stove was right beneath our bedroom.
And I was just a little kid, but there she'd stand ironing those clothes on this stovepipe. Nobody else in the family did it. She had to be smart.
But I was the only one who had corduroy skirts, and you cannot iron corduroy on the right side. Even if you put it wrong side down on the ironing board, it flattens the corduroy. You go like this across the stovepipe, and it takes all the wrinkles out. And
of course, if you hang it on a hanger, it doesn't have all those ugly wrinkles.
You're so smart. Oh, dear.
She used to have lots of boyfriends, and they'd go to dances, and I liked that because they always would give me a nickel.
To disappear.
Well, no, just gave me a nickel.
Rustic account.
Well, mostly I remember the nickels.
I don't remember that. Actually, Florence and I were close enough in age that we went to the same dances, the same school activities, the same. But we did not get along real well. If she was going out with a boy, and he would so much as even say hello to me, whew, that was it. Nothing more to do with him. It was fun. Big bands. Arcota Ballroom, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It's the first place I saw Frank Sinatra. He was singing with Harry James Orchestra at that time.
Where else did you see him?
I'm 65. Oh. I saw him in Las Vegas.
Did you?
Yeah. He was much older then. But I can remember the first, was it movie he was in? No, that was a personal appearance in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. He was in the theater, and they had stretchers, and I'm sure there were cast members dressed as nurses, that sort of thing, because all the girls would faint. They'd swoon.
Oh.
I started the bedlam that day. When he came out on stage, I said, "Woo, Frankie!"
And that was at Sioux Falls at the Arcota?
No, that was at one of the theaters.
Oh.
He did a a stage type thing. That was fun. Dean was a fun little kid.
Really?
Yeah. He had a way of talking that would just crack you up. I can remember one time you'd ask him where he was, and he loved to be outside. And one of the neighbors had one of those wire fences, you know, the big square wire, and it was a, what do you call it, a pig farm, I guess. And he loved to go out there and stand on that fence and watch and listen to those pigs. He came in one time, his nose was running, he was dirty, he'd been out there playing, and Mom asked him where he'd been, and he always got his words twisted up a little. He said, he's out at the pig pen by it. Out of the pig pen by it. But he had the biggest brown eyes and the prettiest smile.
Yeah.
He
still has big brown eyes.
Doesn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know, it seemed like with big families, somehow when a new baby had come along, you kind of grew up right then. You weren't the center of attention again. So you just kind of branched out and did things on your own. Baby chickens on the back porch. It was fun. I remember another time, of course you made cakes in a pan about so big a square when you had a family the size of ours. And he came in and wanted to know if he could have just a piece of a hunk of cake.
Just a piece of a hunk.
Piece of a hunk of cake. He lisped just a tiny bit. I think that's what made it so cute, too.
I don't remember much about anybody when they were younger.
Florence and I had our first job. I think we were like 9 and 11 years old. Washed dishes on Saturday night from like 6 o'clock at night until 7 o'clock the next morning. It was kind of a hangout of the local Saturday night partying crowd.
Good heavens, they partied all night in those days?
Sure, you went to the corner cafe and started out there, then you went to Beloit. They had kind of a nightclub there where I think they closed at 2. Then you came back to the corner cafe and had your chili and so forth to sober up and find your wife or husband or whatever that you might have lost somewhere along the line. And they'd come staggering out in the kitchen. And it's not a nice thing for girls that age to do.
No, I don't think so.
But I think we made 75 cents. Used to babysit all night long for 25 cents. All these people would go out. And then they got to the point where, gee, why should we each pay a quarter for a girl? So they'd all bring their kids to one house. 25 cents. Of course, 25 cents then was a lot more money than...
That's right. If you could buy a pair of coveralls for $1.95, that was a lot of money.
And no tax. No sales tax.
No, no sales tax.
You know, that makes us sound old, doesn't it?
We are old.
You're sure?
Tell a story about grandparents.
Oh, Grandpa was a character. Grandpa was a character.
Grandpa was so aware of everything. He really kept up on things, the politics and what went on in the world. And he liked to talk about it.
Well, he went to Washington every year, visited the senator's office just to keep him on the right track, straighten those guys out. He worked on, wasn't it NRA? What was that program? You were too young to remember that. Florence would remember. It was some government program that he was very active then. It was before Social Security even, so it was before 1932. Grandma was kind of a stern, she liked fun, but in her own little way, and she liked to be the fun. But if anybody else kind of got ahead of her a little bit. And Grandpa would always just ignore her totally. And his trick was to whistle. If she started nagging, tuneless little whistle. And she had a pet phrase then too, was "oh," in that whistle.
I think the things I remember about Grandma is she saved everything.
Yeah, ball of string.
Yeah, meat packages came wrapped in a piece of white paper with string around it, and she saved that string. Had a big ball of string. And anything that had aluminum foil, they called it tin foil. She had a big ball of tin foil.
Gum wrappers.
She peeled gum wrappers and put on her big ball. She saved everything. She used to play the punch boards over at that gas station on the corner.
Right, yeah.
Now, I can't imagine Grandma doing that, but she'd win these big salted nut rolls like things, and she'd never let us eat them. They sat on that thing and that china cabinet thing in the dining room.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she'd say, "You kids want this?" And we didn't know they were wormy then. We ate them. She never let us eat them while they were decent. I suppose it was in case she wanted them or got company or something, but then when they got wormy, she'd let us eat them. But Grandpa was a character. They tried to pay him his life insurance when he turned 100, and he wouldn't take it. I don't know what his reasoning was for that. Maybe he was afraid he'd die if he took that money. But
Tempting
he wouldn't
fate.
take it.
I used to love to hear him tell about the blizzard of 1888.
Yeah.
He was just a young man then. He immigrated from Germany with his parents and brothers and one sister. Is that?
I think so.
But he was very young. I don't remember now exactly how old he was. But they had relatives in Larchwood, Iowa, and they sponsored them to come over. Grandpa worked in the fields. And what was the man's name who taught Grandpa English and Grandpa taught him German? Very learned man.
Yes, a very distinguished man.
Well, anyway, they taught each other their native languages.
From by Larchwood.
But in the blizzard of 1888, he was working out in the field, and it got, of course, with horses and that sort of, and it got a little bit warm, so he took his long-sleeve shirt off, hung it on a fence post, and that blizzard came up very rapidly, just boom, and you couldn't see anything. And the snow was deep. But the horses, he let the horses have their head, and they took him home. But he didn't realize he was home until he bumped into the clothesline. And then by following that, he could get the horses to the barn. And it was his mother, I think, had the lantern in the window, hoping that they'd be able to see that.
Many, many people died in that blizzard. School children, they just found, you know, they'd huddled together. And must have been a terrible storm.
But I can remember Grandpa saying, when they walked back to town, the snow was as high as the telephone wire would be today. And he wore a pair of mittens out, going like this, keep his arms walking to town and back.
We've speculated many times about why Grandpa lived so long. It certainly wasn't because of his diet. You know, now they say you mustn't eat cholesterol and things like that. They raised chickens and hogs back when the days when hogs were fat,
Cows.
and always had a cow. And they had that thick yellow cream on everything. They ate everything on a hog, you know, pounds and pounds of lard.
Even the squeal.
And they fried everything, and then they soaked their bread in the grease in the frying pan. So it certainly wasn't diet that kept the man alive. But I think it was his attitude about life. You know, he didn't get upset, he didn't hurry. He was a busy person, but he never hurried.
No.
I really think that it was his attitude.
He had the wryest sense of humor. I can remember one time too, we used to love to go to the barn with him. He had a couple of milk cows all the time. So they'd have their cream and make cottage cheese. To make cottage cheese, they'd set just the milk part on the back of the stove where it was just barely warm. Let it all clabber up and the whey had come to the top, and drain that off, and they had cottage cheese. But we used to love to go out to the barn with him. And I think it was Uncle Ted. He was about the most devilish one of the kids. But he had a trick light bulb he screwed in the socket. Grandpa had his old milk stool out, and he was milking away, and the lights went out. He got up and was going to look at it, and about that time the light came back on. It was a long time snooze chewer, tobacco chewer. He'd spit off in the corner and sit down again, and milking away, and all of a sudden, why did it go up again? Well, finally Uncle Ted started to giggle or some such thing. Grandpa knew where he was, and he came out and showed him that the bulb was fixed that way so it would come off. And Grandpa did not take things like that well. He didn't like to be tricked. And he said, I just have one thing to say to you. Too bad you weren't in my spitting corner.
Yeah, Grandpa used to swear that he went home from recess to nurse. I don't know, maybe it was true, you know. Maybe.
He probably was, because they thought then as long as they were nursing they couldn't get pregnant.
Well, I don't know what the deal was, but then he also said he started chewing tobacco when he was 5. In first grade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was real level-headed. It ran down both sides of his mouth.
Pat used to call him old 111. He had a diamond on the end of the nose and 2 rivers here. But he was fun. He could tell a story like none other. I can remember when he retired. He was the first rural mail carrier in South Dakota. Delivered the mail on the Larchwood route by horse and buggy. And eventually his old Model T. I can remember that roadster sitting in the backyard after it was, you know, worn out. And we'd love to go out and play in that. It had there was spark on one side and gas on the other side. There were levers on the steering, below the steering wheel, on the column. And to start it, there's no battery or anything. You go out and crank it.
See, I don't remember him ever driving at all. He had that Durant.
Yeah, the big old touring car.
A new car in the shed there. They bought it to drive to California and never drove it again.
You know, that was in the 1932 earthquake.
Was
in
it?
Long Beach, California.
Was it? But
They
anyway,
experienced that.
we used to play in that car.
Jan's down here for the 1990 earthquake, which is due at 4:56, I think it is, tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow.
So if we are here tomorrow night, this videotape will last.
Yes, and we will.
Otherwise, you've missed it all.
We will be here. What I remember about the old Model Ts is Aunt Ella and Mom. She'd come to visit us, and they'd fight like you and Florence.
Why, Florence and I never fought.
I don't know what Mom and Aunt Ella would get in those fights about because we never paid any attention. But all of a sudden, she'd go stomping out to that car. She had breasts that long, and she never wore a bra. And she'd grab that crank, and she'd crank that old Model T up, and it was just like, oh dear, that was funny. It was funny.
Quite a family.
Yep. She'd whip that Model T into action and tear off down the street. Or Model A, whatever it was. Those old black cars you had to crank anyway.
Yeah. That's Model T.
What's the story about backing the Model T up over the hill?
Oh, that was the biggest, or the closest shopping area was in Sioux Falls, which is 24 miles away. And the only highway going in there then was a two-lane 77, is that it?
Highway 77.
77. And going into Sioux Falls and Minnehaha Hill, it was fine going down. And by today's standards, that wouldn't be a hill at all, but for a Model T, that was a big car. And Grandma loved to shop. She loved to buy, and she loved to look and feel. And she never bought anything until she'd looked at everything in all of the stores. And then she'd decide what she wanted where and go make the trip back again. Grandpa's futzing around. He's all anxious because he's got to get home to do chores before dark and all that. And to get up the Minnesota Hill, they had to back up because the car didn't have enough power in forward drive, whatever you called it in those days.
Well, it was probably mud too, or gravel, or whatever.
It was gravel. It was a really steep hill. And he finally got up and around the curve, and the top was down on this old roadster, and he's really just quietly talking to himself how he was mad. He wanted Grandma to get done and get home. And he says, "See there? Now it's raining already." And he licked his hand. A bird had flown over and did his little duty. Now that really made him mad. If he wasn't mad before, he was. Oh, golly. The last time I saw Grandpa, I think he was he 103 when he broke his ankle? 101?
Well, 103 at least. It wasn't that long before he died. A year and a half. Yeah.
He used to, he was busy till the day he died. And his only concession was, rather than get down on his hands and knees to dig dandelions in the yard, he'd lean over, sit in the canvas folding lawn chair, and lean over and dig the dandelions that way. But I think he was on the porch when that chair collapsed.
Yeah, it was just a folding lawn chair, and you know how sometimes their legs aren't, and he sat down and it just collapsed with his leg under him.
But the doctor said at that time that his bones were just tissue paper thin. There's no way that would heal.
It did.
Nobody told Grandpa he couldn't do anything.
No.
I remember he had that cancer taken off the top of his head. It was a tumor, malignant tumor on top of his head. And before surgery, the anesthesiologist always comes in the night before and explains, well, he said, "Fred, I'm the doctor who's going to put you to sleep in the morning before you have your operation." He said, "Put me to sleep? Nobody's putting me to sleep." He said, "Well, my God, Fred, a man of your age couldn't stand an operation like that without going to sleep." Well, that's all you had to tell him. "Oh my God, I will." And he did. They gave him a local anesthetic, cut half the top of his head off.
Well, and then they had to take the skin from his legs. They did skin grafting.
That's right.
Yeah, that.
But maybe that's where I get my...
It's not stubborn, it's determined.
Well, I think we could go some way, midway there.
No, I'm not a stubborn person. I'm determined. Now, I don't know about you. Maybe you're stubborn.
Florence is the one that was stubborn.
I hope she never sees this. Was. You said was.
That's right.
She's...
That's right.
Tell me some more Florence stories.
She used to beat the crap out of me.
Why?
Because I was shorter than she was. She's takes after my dad's family. She's taller and a thinner build. I'm built like you are, short and squatty, fat, pudgy, but very lovable.
Actually, I think most of the fighting that I remember was over clothes and boyfriends.
Well, yeah, boys.
Yeah.
If she went out with somebody, I was determined to go with him the next night. And after I went with him, she'd never go with him again.
So it was kind of a contest.
It was. But even before that, as we were kids growing up, she used to pound the socks off me regularly. And one time I swung around and accidentally hit her in the nose with the back of my hand, gave her a bloody nose, and she never was quite as...
Accidentally you did that?
Mm-hmm. She didn't know that. She thought I poked her.
Well, I don't know. From a lot of those arguments I remember.
Well, you would, yeah.
Florence was always a really neat person.
Yeah,
and
she still is.
She would wash her clothing and iron it, and old Laura May, she'd come home and whip into that fresh clothing and leave her dirty.
But I had to go to work, see?
Well,
I was 2 years older than she was, and I had to dash from school and go to work and work my little fingers to the
I
bone.
also remember you two sharing that room upstairs. I suppose we were in it too, but
Yeah,
she claimed half and gave you half.
yeah, but I had Alpha and you.
No, I usually
didn't.
slept with Florence.
Florence was in a single bed.
Well,
There were three of us in a double bed.
when we four were still in that big room, and half of it was Florence's and half of it was yours. And your half was a terrible mess, and Florence would clean her half and thumbtack a string down the middle, and you were not to cross that string.
I don't remember that at all. I remember clothes hangers in that closet, though. We had a bar against the closet, and we'd roll old short lengths of wallpaper or newspaper if we got Grandma's newspapers, because we couldn't afford one. We'd roll newspaper up in a little thing about so big around, tie meat string around that, then tie the string over the rod, and that's what we hung our clothes on. But mine kept falling off.
Did they?
Long before they got to the closet.
I don't remember hangers like that at all.
Yeah.
But of course, then I had a bicycle too, so.
You had roller
did-
skates too,
I
and you
didn't-
broke your arm twice.
Yeah, yeah. I had all the good things in life. Got
That's true. Jan was 5 years younger. There was only like 22 to 24 months between the other 6 of us, actually. We lost a brother before I was born.
I suppose life was a lot different by the time I came along. You lived through the Depression. You
Yeah,
lived
right.
through the worst time in the
Yeah.
history of
Yeah.
our country.
But you know, you look back now, and we didn't know any different.
No, that's because everybody was struggling.
I have some pictures, and you talk about Tobacco Road. There's one of me about, I would say, a year and a half old, and Dad and Pete sitting on a back wooden porch, and that porch is right down on the ground, and you can see the splintered ends of it and so forth. It is really, it's like Appalachia. There's another one too. What's that other one? They really, but everybody lived that way.
Yeah.
Unless you lived on the north end of town.
Yeah, unless you was a professional person.
Professional peoples, we had one doctor and one lawyer. That was the professional people in town.
Well, the store owners, and
Yeah,
at least I looked
those were
on them.
merchandisers.
Well, I thought of them. I guess anybody that put on a shirt that had been ironed and starched
Yeah.
to go to work, I figured was professional people. Or had a bathroom.
Yeah, you were lucky. They didn't have a bathroom before I married and left home.
No?
The worst part of that was there were 2 boys in the family. And they were not good aimers. In the wintertime, that was a little bit uncomfortable.
Well, there were always Dean's chickens in there, though, to keep it warm. Sure, in the wintertime, Dean put his chickens in the outdoor biffy to keep them warm.
I can remember, too, on that place on South Pleasant Street, 209 South Pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that wood shed, coal shed?
Mm-hmm.
We used to get a side of beef or a side of pork, I think it was, half a pig. And Dad would hang it from a rafter out there, and it was so cold that there was no chance of it spoiling. And if he couldn't saw a piece off with the regular old saw, wood saw, he'd get the axe down and chop a piece off.
Is that right? I don't remember that.
Then there's the time Mom had that big strawberry bed back behind, straight out from the back porch.
Yeah?
And she used to go out early in the morning and pick strawberries. And she usually got in the strawberry bed barefooted so she wouldn't, because it's not rows and that sort of thing. You had to find a place to put your foot down. We heard a big pop, and then we heard a big scream.
She stepped on that big toe.
Stepped on a big toad and popped it.
That was terrible.
Woo.
That was terrible.
What else were some of the things that...
Tell us about Mama.
About what?
Your mother. Mama.
That's what I'm talking about.
She pretty much held our family together. She was a good cook. I guess that's what I remember about Mom. She was always in the kitchen cooking,
Yeah.
but she never did the dishes. No.
That's true.
Yeah.
She could make the best meatloaf with potatoes, probably more bread and eggs and onions than meat.
And
Put it in a great big iron chicken fryer type thing with the potatoes and onions and carrots around it. And that was good stuff. Something else we used to do, like we were 7 in the family because you weren't eating yet. And we'd go to town every day and get one of the big paper bags full of groceries. And a pound of hamburger fed all of us. But there was a lot of homemade bread soaked in water, chopped onions, and of course eggs were a big thing. They were a dime a dozen probably. Put about 3 eggs in there, make patties, fry it in that old iron skillet with lots of grease in it, then make milk gravy out of that.
oh, I still love that.
I do too.
Oh, that's the best thing. It's like fried meatloaf.
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
It is.
yeah, we love that. That's a real treat at our house.
I made some of that one day last winter.
Yeah, that's a real treat. Well, you talk about the pound of hamburger. I thought everybody took 2 pieces of wax paper, put some flour on it, and this little ball of hamburger, and then some more flour on top and a piece of wax paper, and then you rolled it. And you know, you had a paper thin piece of hamburger with a lot of flour. I thought that's the way everybody ate hamburger. But it's just that, you know, you only got so many little hamburger balls out of a pound of hamburger. Well, I loved it.
Yeah. Well, what do you think we're like we are today?
Yeah. Mashed
What's your
potatoes and
excuse, Joel?
gravy. And
You fed me.
I carried all those bad habits over.
yeah, we all loved our kids with food.
Yeah,
If you're hurt or if you're tired or if you're good or
If you're bad.
you get loved with food.
Kill yourself with kindness.
You was a real good mom if you baked cookies for the kids.
Sure.
Mom baked all day every Saturday.
Yeah.
That was just a tradition. Donuts and
When we lived across the street from the last home the folks had, in that Arnold house, she used to bake bread that She had a bread pan so big, I think it held 8 loaves. And, she'd break them apart so the sides were soft then, nice and crusty on top and crusty on the bottom. And she went someplace one afternoon, and I was supposed to take care of the bread, get it out of the old cook stove oven, cooked with wood and coal and so forth. To know how hot, what the temperature of the oven was, you could stick your hand in the oven and just about tell, okay, that's 350. Or what we would know now is 350. And I decided that bakery bread was softer than homemade bread.
Oh, so we won't bake it so much.
No, we baked it that long, but while it was still hot, we took the loaves apart and moved the table over in front of the window and let the wind blow in on it. By the time she got home, I had that bread so dried out. I really got a licking over that.
Cinnamon rolls. She made wonderful caramel rolls. Wonderful caramel rolls.
Slather on the butter, the brown sugar.
Oh, sure.
The
Butter
raisin.
and brown sugar. Cream if you had it. That's
Yeah.
how you made the caramel to put on them. Yeah, it's no wonder my cholesterol's 390. No, I did that myself. I'm not going to blame her
No.
for that. It's my stashes of candy bars
M&Ms.
and M&Ms.
A good book and a pound of M&Ms.
Yeah, or 2.
Oh, I remember a good one on Jan. Right after you and Bernard were married. You know what I'm going to say, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
We used to have salted nut rolls that came in a yellow cellophane paper. And they were in bed, and Jan liked to lay in bed, eat candy bars, and read. Bernard gets up at, 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work, works 12 hours a day. She's trying very quietly to unwrap her candy bar without crinkling it, and it just didn't work. He raised up and looked over at her, and she says, "Want a bite?" It's the only thing she could think of to say.
What else could you say? Yeah, that's true. I did that. Pretty fast thinking,
That
really.
is,
Yeah.
really. You had good teachers and older siblings, too.
That's right.
You really were lucky because you got spoiled by all of us.
That's true. I was very lucky. I felt real special until I grew up enough to find out that I wasn't.
No, you still are special.
Oh, the world doesn't really think so. I mean, to family, you're always special.
Well, I'll tell you, yesterday you made me feel very special.
Well, I'm glad because you are special and you had a special day, and that's what I came for.
I was 39 again yesterday.
It's getting very heavy, isn't it?
It's quite a burden to carry. No, I'm 65, look every day of it, and I'm proud of it. I think.
I think it's
Tell
time
us.
for the closing theme and Miss The End to come on. Don't you think so?
I think we ought to have a little hug first.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I love you, Sissy.
Oh, I love you too.